David, how are you? Thank you, sir.
Hey, Todd. Good to see you.
I wanted to have you on because we're talking about disclosures today, and we're starting to get some, but not all of them. And you've been deeply involved in the election fraud stuff, and you're a former prosecutor, and I really appreciate you coming on last minute. But let's start with the biggie. Bongino and Cash come out and said Epstein didn't kill himself. Well, why did they turn the cameras off? Were all the guards not there? What say you about that statement?
It just doesn't pass the sniff test,
Yeah.
right? I mean, look, there's certain security protocols that you should have answers for in a facility. And so when you've got this much um, scrutiny, I mean, everyone knows that Epstein was a high value target, both for good guys and bad guys.
Right.
And it wasn't just that. I mean, there was another post that was put out by Liz Harrington, and I'm scratching my head on the insights they're bringing up with the assassination attempt on Trump and
Mhm,
Butler.
mhm, mhm. Which we've
And
heard nothing about, right?
yes, but the fact that Dan Bongino is like, if there was something salacious that was worthy of sharing, we would have done it. I'm like, I just don't believe you.
Yeah.
I don't buy the original narrative, and I certainly don't buy what they're saying. And so this is the first time that I've got some doubts.
Yeah, yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
I came in like, let's get Cash in there. Let's get Dan in there. And I've been following. I could kind of give them grace on all kinds of things on my timetable. I want to see arrest. A lot of people want to see accountability. But these just seem out of left field. I didn't feel like these were the same two people that I've been following uh,
Yes.
for 4 years. They look like company men.
Love your new background, by the way. It looks great.
You.
I agree with you, and that's again why I wanted to have you on. It almost looks like they took some TV personalities that had been built up in the media and put them in to make MAGA, happy and jump up and down and have a celebration. But at the end of the day, they're just there to play a part, like so many other people we see in our government. I'm worried about that. Does that worry you at all?
It does. I mean, on the one hand, I get the picks because you want, above all, I don't even think it's necessarily competency. I think you
Mm.
want effective communicators because
Yeah,
let's make no mistake. These are your talking heads that are going to show up and represent each respective agency. So whether it's
sure.
Pam Bondi, whether it's Cash Patel, you want great communicators, and I think that they are that. Um, but I just feel like there's still this missing the mark on who the people that I think have a greater amount of integrity, that I just have a greater trust factor with.
Yeah,
Uh, Ed Martin,
yeah.
in particular, he has shown a willingness to go places and get muddied up and destroyed by the media. Doesn't get any of the fanfare, but he was one of the major architects for the blanket pardons for the J6ers. And the fact that Tom Tillis and people like that are shutting down the nominations and the approvals for people like Ed Martin or even a Matt Gaetz. It's like one of those things where, like, that's who I want. I want the people that the swamp are just thrashing about, figuring out there's no way we can have Matt Gaetz. There's no way that we can have Ed Martin. But somehow the TV personalities get in. That
Somehow.
is confusing. Yeah.
You mentioned Ed Martin. He did a great interview with Tucker, which I really enjoyed. But he's come out and said he's going after the pardon. The Biden pardons. Um, do you think we'll see anything there eventually? Uh,
I think to the degree that Ed Martin is not handcuffed
yeah.
from people that are higher up, it appears that he's willing to go places that others aren't. Number one, um, he made a statement with Benny Johnson that
Mhm.
the J6s are entitled to compensation. Okay, wow, great. I mean, we know that, but to have someone from within the Trump administration signaling, much like the DOJ did with Mickey Whithoff. There was a wrongful death settlement where they made things right with her. That's the mother of Ashley Babbitt. Ed Martin is signaling that, yeah, if you've been wronged and over 1,000 people were wrong, we want to make this right.
Yeah.
That's huge. In his interview with Tucker, he also talked about the certification fiction that's going on with our election systems. He didn't have to go there. That actually surprised me, that this guy that I've been following mostly for J6 has been following elections very,
Yeah.
very closely. And the fact that he said out loud with one of the major platforms out there that the certification process for our elections is more or less fictitious. It's illusory. And so those are the types of things where it's like, okay, you've got an audience, you're hitting things that need to be hit on in a
Right.
very real way. And yet the other folks that we just mentioned are kind of talking around the real issue. So,
Totally.
um, I get the sense that Ed, and if you look at his background, Ed's been attacked. I
Yeah.
didn't
I know.
realize how much about Ed. I mean, he's mixed it up in as a state GOP person. He has tried his best to kind of clean up the swamp in local ways in the state of Missouri, and so he's not going to be, I think, just thrown off the scent by virtue of someone saying something mean about him because he's
Right.
got his own history of litigation, and so I like what I see.
They're coming out with the the character assassination stuff on him now, because that's when they roll out the big guns. What about the DOJ saying they're going to get to the bottom of the Russia hoax? And let me ask this in context that I'm really disappointed we haven't heard anything from Cash or Bongino or Bondi about the elections. I mean, yeah, Ed Martin may be talking about it, but nobody's talking about election fraud. We just had a massive 4-year coup. And as you know, the elections aren't real.
Well, look, I think, with Pam Bondi right out the gate, we're going to get you Epstein, and then we don't get it.
Yeah.
So even the announcement, over the past few days where they're saying
Hmm.
we've got reliable intelligence on Russia, Russia, Russia. Part of me is sitting there. I've heard this before,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Me
and
too.
but at the same time, let's afford them a little bit of grace for just a second and think in terms of the American people on what would be considered the low-hanging fruit if you were going to pursue arrest.
Hmm.
The one thing that I think the American people have integrated and acclimated themselves to more so than elections, even more so than COVID, is the Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. Most of even your mainstream media sources have had to come to terms with the fact that they misreported Russia, Russia, Russia.
Hmm.
Uh, Mueller basically came out and said he had nothing. And so, from a standpoint of prosecution, from a low hanging fruit standpoint, this would probably be the point of entry if they're serious. If I were going to start with kind of the larger stuff, let's go after the Crossfire Hurricane folks. Let's go after the Comeys of the world. Start with something that the American people, by and large, aren't confused about. They figure there was really nothing there. It was political weaponization. From that standpoint, just from architecting a case that I would want to prosecute, knowing that you have to deal with the subconscious of the American people. And if you see an arrest and a conviction, you're basically, you're getting a cue from the world that they might be ready for accountability in elections, COVID. So I like the messaging. I like the fact that they're talking about it, but it's talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. That brings me to Comey. We had the big Comey issue over the weekend, and I believe he lives in Connecticut, and I don't know where he was on the beach. There's a lot of questions about that, but then we saw other 86, 47, pool tables come out and all that stuff, and now Gabbard is saying he should be in jail. What will be done about that, if anything, in your view?
Well, I have looked at the image.
Mm-hmm.
The image looks like an aerial photograph, and I know Comey's tall. I mean, I know he's tall, but for him to create a story that I just happened to be walking on the beach,
Yeah.
and I came across this political messaging, and it looks like a top-down, almost drone photograph of something you'd find, on the internet. Um, I mean, yeah, the guy's like 10 feet tall, so maybe
Yeah.
it's possible. But the way that it's lit, the way that it's the clarity of something, it looks like an image that obviously he found and he put it out there.
Yeah.
So back to Ed Martin. Ed Martin actually said something that was great to hear, which was either he's going to get in trouble, be imprisoned for the call for an assassination attempt, or his messaging so unbelievable that he'll be imprisoned for perjury. Again, I mean, where where does Ed get kind of the tacit authority from the administration itself to make those claims unless he's got the authority to do so? In some respects, it seems like when we get access to people that we're not quite as knowledgeable about, Ed Martin being one, it's like Trump gives them an opportunity to message in public. And so I just can't, it's hard for me to believe that Ed Martin can just go on these shows all at once,
Yeah.
whether it's Tucker, and not have some level of authority to say what he just did. But that's huge for he's like, look, prison's going to happen. It's either going to be, we got you by the short hairs when it comes to the call for an assassination, or we got you for perjury. Out of the mouth of the pardon attorney, the guy that's looking at weaponization. That's what he's been conferred with the mantle of authority. So there's lots of things about just the story that doesn't add up. And the other thing, Todd, is I don't think we've seen Comey on TV. You've seen a statement that's been put out on behalf of him, or maybe it's him, but it's always odd when you don't have someone showing up where you
meaning he's been detained or something. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I don't know, but the thoughts crossed my mind on, okay, wait a minute. Is this just an account that someone is activating, accessing, messaging? It just seems so sloppy. Like, I just don't think you can have evil that is so ingenious to create this giant trap for Trump from 2016 to 2024. And then all of a sudden, I would have no idea of the repercussions of 8647. It seems clumsy. It seems haphazard. And honestly, it's like, if this is how dumb the deep state is, then.
So you think there's something bigger going on here, is what you're saying? Like some other drama that we're not really having insight into, transparency into.
My intuition tells me, I mean, look, I've gone after really evil people in drug trafficking. They're just not this dumb. They're not this sloppy. But I mean, outside of being, labeled some wild conspiracy theorist, I'm just telling you, my intuition is that James Toney knows how to play the game. The fact that this shot came out the way that it did,
interesting.
It seems like it's just manna from heaven for the Trump administration, if that makes sense. And I'm not used to a world where things come easy for the good.
Totally. Not of the last 4 years. What about the vaccine? A lot of drama going on with Kennedy, on the mRNA vax, the Callie means, Casey means. We're going to play a clip from Peter Galula, the wellness company CEO, kind of an internal fight between them. But are we going to get these pulled off the market? What are your thoughts?
Well, if RFK Jr.'s testimony is any indication, it appears that I've seen things that they definitely want to take it off the schedule for children, which is a good start. And, RFK Jr. mixing it up with various members of Congress, I've been impressed. I've actually felt like Trump got this one right. He's saying what needs to be said. I know that there's a lot of drama with Callie Means. I know that there's people like Laura Loomer. They're like, okay, has anyone done any vetting? They've talked about her lack of credentials. So I guess where I come down on this is everyone with credentials has poisoned.
Totally.
People. Everyone with credentials told us that we had a lockdown. Everyone with credentials told us we had to wear a mask. So that argument doesn't fly with me. But there's been some back and forth with Nicole Shanahan as someone who's a running mate of RFK Jr., heavily critical that we're not getting the full story about Means. And so, it's like a lot of these other figures, it's like a soap opera that we're all watching real time. But when it comes to the director of HHS and his statements, I like the messaging from RFK Jr. and I think he's got a mandate. I think he's going to try to get us there. And if the congressional testimony was any evidence of that, I think he's serious.
We'll see. So you've been involved traveling the country on your own dime or at financial cost to you, lost your job, and really were involved in the election stuff, at the grassroots level. 26 is coming up. we're reporting stuff that in Florida there's still major problems,
Hmm.
from the mail-in ballots to some of the blank ballot issues to vote by mail, all of that. Where do you think the elections are in this country at the moment, from your vantage point after being so involved?
We're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed from the standpoint of until we get rid of um, architecture that we know is being subverted,
Hmm.
we're in big trouble. And one of the big stories that's gone under the radar recently, but it's huge because it validates everything that we've been concerned about, is the work of Edward Solomon.
Hmm.
He is a mathematician genius, and he saw anomalies in Arapahoe County, Colorado, and in addition to Clark County, Nevada. He's an expert witness in a case filed by Andy Thompson. And it's more of these mathematical impossibilities. And there's going to be an article put out by my wife, hopefully today, that really explains what we're finding here. But let me see if I can unpack it really quick, because this is
Yeah.
complete vindication. There was a cast vote record analysis that was recently done, and we're seeing the same impossible pattern, both in Nevada and in Colorado. But in particular, what we found is that there was a period of time where the Republicans and Democrats voted identically on increasing property taxes. Okay.
Hmm.
So most people know that Republicans would never, ever vote to this degree. But if you plot out the data, it shows that they're in lockstep. So
Hmm.
um, there was a request to pull that cast vote record. And once it became apparent to Arapahoe County that the cast vote record was being scrutinized, out of nowhere, they got some backing from some Yale professor who said, "Oh, no, I actually alerted Colorado back in October about an error in a cast vote record out of 3,000. I just happened to stumble across this cast vote record."
Jeez.
And they called it, they basically said there were some incorrections there that needed to be redacted.
Hmm.
Well, they produced a new cast vote record that looks like it was fraudulently created to make the data look more natural, the way that you would have expected, where you would have had differences of how the
Hmm.
Republicans and Democrats voted. Problem is when you actually look at the trail, the archive trails, this didn't take place in October. It was actually very recently. So it's almost as if someone was following the Ed Solomon case and started after the fact changing cast vote records. This is a huge bombshell, because if we know that they can do that, and we know that they can do that, you can basically change the record, the audit record.
We recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
For any race at any time, depending on who is poking and looking behind the scenes. So there's an investigation there that we're going to certainly put at the doorstep of the FBI. I know Ed Solomon has already contacted the FBI. It's almost like they created a perjury trap where he had all of this great analysis,
Hmm.
and then someone changed out the records thinking that he wouldn't have had the due diligence to go back and see what they did. But there's something about cast vote record destruction or changes that are very, very visible to the eyes of experts. And so this Yale professor, I think, really stepped into a world that he's about to get an education from some of the best experts on planet Earth that we're onto. And he actually scrubbed illegally a copyrighted database provided by Jeff O'Donnell, who is the guy that did the Mesa reports
Hmm.
in Colorado. So what you're seeing is this effort by the Ivy League institutions that are part of the cover-up. When you look at the Stanford Observatory, groupthink, trying to build consensus that our elections are legitimate, they basically scraped all of his copyrighted material and put it into their own website. And now they're giving talking points that essentially are there going forward to make us think that our elections are safe and secure. Don't worry about what Jeff O'Donnell said. Don't worry about Dr. Walter Doherty's analysis. Don't worry about Draza Smith's analysis. We, the experts, have the answers. So back to your original question, like we get these bombshells.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
they happen often. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, I'm like, okay, here's more evidence that shows that there's massive manipulation of the machines, of the software. We're right. We know we're right. We can expose even Yale professors as being tools in this this narrative operation. But where's my hope? Because I haven't seen accountability. This evidence in Arapahoe County should be enough to get Tina Peters out, because it's, again, this is another Colorado fix. Some of the players that were responsible for the messaging, working behind the scenes with the DOJ under Biden's administration, are complicit. And when you've got something like this that corroborates Tina Peters' valiant whistleblowing efforts, this is something that someone has to get her out, make her a federal witness, for crying out loud, and get her out of custody in the prison system. So we're going to try to leverage this story as much as we can with the Trump administration to help Tina. But once again, we're being vindicated. But 2026 is going to be here before you know it. So if I had my wish list, Todd, I think we need an executive order that's couched in national security, a national security framework. I do not think that county clerks, knowing their ilk over the past 4 years, will actually help us with a hand count. I think they will drop the ball. I think they will look to lawfare. I think they're going to want to tie this up with the courts. So unless something very, very heavy-handed comes from the Trump administration, at least to federal races, he can't do everything from a state level, but from 2 or 3 races that are going to be on a ballot next year, he needs to speak quickly, because we need at least a year to run up and be prepared to do the federal races. And I think Trump's headed that way. I really do. It's just
that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, he's been very vocal about this election fraud. He says it over and over, especially recently. But will that translate into action, as you say?
Well, I mean, look, you got the first executive order where he removed people that were in charge of the censorship regime over at CISA. You know, in order for us to battle, we have to also win hearts and minds. And so he took away their voice when it came to the censorship regime. He has to do that. He had an executive order investigating Chris Krebs, and he's part of Sentinel One. And it appears that he has got the Sentinel One folks up in arms. I've seen letters behind the scenes where they're very, very upset over the targeting of Chris Krebs. But the fact that he's being investigated, had his security clearances stripped, that's huge. So that's the second EO that we saw. The third one is something that I think went over most people's heads, which was making sure that all of the voting systems are up to the 2.0 standard. And there's not a single system that's up to the 2.0 standard. So he's effectively putting something out there that I think he knows they can't comply with. But you can't leave it there, because I'm already seeing posturing from people like in Louisiana, the SOS there, saying, well, we've gotten approval to basically, you know, use the system. Let's spend $150 million on a new set of Dominion computers, and we'll get to the upgrade when we can. That's going to be the posturing across the country. But to the degree that Trump means what he said in the last EO, I think we're probably going to look at another 2 or 3 executive orders, in my opinion, that's going to continue to flush people out, people like Adrian Fontes, who went on record that he's not going to comply. And then if I had to give my best guess, I think come August, the hammer's going to come down, because then you really don't have any more time to wait to prepare the American people for an election that's not going to be chaotic.
So last question. I just lost it. What else are you seeing out there? I guess just close it with that.
I see weariness. I see cynicism. I see all the things that you would expect, but I also see this glimmer of hope that we're still seeing things that if the Ed Martins of the world are given leeway, or get accountability, if Cash and Bongino are serious about credible information that they can bring forward for a prosecution in Russia, that's a great thing. None of this stuff was at our fingertips in November of last year.
True.
So I guess my last word is, we're not talking about nothing this morning. We're talking about substantive evidence that keeps surfacing. And it seems like our biggest disappointment right now is that the Trump administration doesn't appear to be working under our timeline.
Yeah.
And, all can be forgiven. If you get an arrest and a conviction,
That's
all
true.
can be forgiven. But until that happens, I think it's our obligation to bitch, moan, and complain until we get some semblance that the swamp is going to be dealt with in a conclusive manner.
That's what we're fighting for here. I know what I was going to ask you. You're all involved in this for a long time. Do you have like a communications channel open? I mean, are they getting this information on Team Trump? Because it's like an opaque, you can't see behind the wall.
Yeah, I put it this way. Like, I know people that know people that talk to people. I'm kind of
like us. Yeah.
I'm a gopher. Look,
Yeah.
I could probably pick up the phone and do it, but I just don't.
Yeah.
But put it this way, we have been laboring behind the scenes nonstop. I'm probably more quiet on social media than I've ever been. And it's because I've never been more busy. And so all I can say is that behind the scenes, we are trying our best to create advice that will hold up constitutionally. That the Trump administration needs to do everything it can within its national security framework to get the support of Congress, get support of the judiciary, that when he pulls the trigger, no one can say that he's acting like a tyrant. And people are going to say it anyway, but it's up to us to make sure that he has got as many options where he knows that, okay, if worse comes to worse, and it will come to that, what are his obligations under the Constitution to save the Union? And I'll plant one last seed because I think this is really important. Stephen Miller, his senior advisor, has come out many times in front of that White House, and he keeps planting the seed when it comes to the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus.
I saw that. Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. And he's tying it mostly to the invasion at the border, right?
Right.
Because under Article 1, just so people know, when someone talks about the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, there's a lot of confusion where people think that it means that you're just going to ignore the Constitution. That's wildly incorrect, because there's the actual text of the Constitution, Article 1, that provides for the suspension clause, that in times of invasion or rebellion, that could be so deep-seated that you get rid of due process that would aid the enemy.
Right.
Well, so he's been focusing on immigration, but one of the components that we look at from the election system is that at the border, when people are invading, they're being given ID numbers. They're going to the DMV to register to get driver's license, which automatically puts them on our voter rolls as a matter of law. And so now you're looking at an invasion of the sovereignty of our nation, a rebellion that's leading to usurpers taking hold of office like Biden through use of the auto pen. And so it seems like Trump is being much, much more bold in his messaging about kind of the kill count from Hillary Clinton. He put out a video there. He's got a post with all roads lead back to Barack Obama and a call for public military tribunals. Like, he knows the effect that this is going to have on the deep state. So I just don't think you throw that kind of rhetoric around unless you're signaling to the bad guys, we will take this all the way to its logical end. Don't mess with us. And so reading between the lines, I think from an election standpoint, solutions, we are trying to figure out in wisdom, okay, if you mean what you say, Mr. President, we want to make sure that everything that you do is done by the book, lawfully in accordance with the Constitution. But make no mistake, the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus can be done constitutionally. It can be lawfully. And if you're seeing the world through my eyes, we've already satisfied the criteria that you need for a suspension, which is invasion, rebellion, and it has something to do with the public safety. our country's been devastated by fentanyl. It's been
Yeah.
devastated by giving someone like Biden access to, high-level national security decisions. I mean, we're lucky we haven't succumbed to some type of World War III attack.
Yeah.
So, with
That's
all
what
that
I'm
in play,
thinking.
I think, I'm hopeful.
Well, they have to war game this out on the other side. Will the Supreme Court say, well, you can't do that, like they just did? I mean,
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of why I think Miller is saying this. Like, I think they're sending shots across the bow, including the Supreme Court. Keep in mind, it was all of Trump's appointees that ruled
well, I
against
know.
him, right, on expelling terrorist organizations from the border. So when Stephen Miller comes out and says, "Hey, this is on the table," what exactly does that accomplish? It accomplishes a way to circumvent corrupt judiciaries that are actually participating in the invasion and the rebellion against our United
So you
States.
think he would just do it and then, damn the Supreme Court because they're part of it?
Well, I think it scares a lot of people, right? And the only
Yeah.
historical reference you have is Lincoln.
Yeah.
Now, Article 1 contemplates the congressional authority. It does not contemplate the executive, at least from a textual standpoint.
Mhm.
But Lincoln understood that as the chief executive, the person has to enforce the law, that actually has to quell and put down the rebellion, that he's not going to wait for Congress to get their act together. So Lincoln acted as the chief executive, suspended the writ of habeas corpus. Justice Taney actually said that he ruled unconstitutionally. But what did Lincoln do? He ignored the Supreme Court, number one.
Wow.
And number two, the Congress noted that the public sentiment was in favor of what Lincoln did and ratified after the fact
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Lincoln's decision to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. So after the fact, they constitutionally protected him. At that point, the Supreme Court was out. I think Trump is looking closely at what Lincoln did. And if necessary, it's clear in his messaging on truth that he says the public is on our side. They're not on your side, Supreme Court. It's time for you to save the republic.
Interesting.
It's huge.
Great insight. David, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And see you next time. Take care.
Anytime, Todd.